Mrs. Henderson put her hands under her apron and smirked. "Well, Mr. Phillips, it do sound strange to 'ear you talkin' to me like that. Anybody'd think I'd done something as I didn't ought to 'a done to 'ear you going on. As for what's apeened, I'll tell you all I know with the greatest willingness on earth. And as for bein' careful, there ain't no call for you to tell me to be that, for that I always am, as by now you ought to know." "Yes, I do know. Is that all you have to say?" "Really, Mr. Phillips, what a man you are for catching people up, you really are." "Oh, course that ain't all I've got to say, ain't I just comin' to it?" "Then come." "If you presses me so you'll muddle of me up, and then if I do 'appen to make of her, you'll say I'm a liar, when goodness knows there ain't no more truthful woman not in Limehouse." Words plainly trembled on the inspector's lips, which he refrained from uttering. Mrs. Henderson cast her eyes upwards, as if she sought for inspiration from the filthy ceiling. "So far as I can swear it might ave been a hour ago, or it might ave been a hour and a quarter, or it might ave been a hour and 20 minutes. We're not particular as to the seconds. When I hears a knockin' at my front door, and when I comes to open it, there was a Harab party, with a great bundle on his 'ead, bigger nor hisself, and 2 other parties along with him. This Harab party says, in that queer foreign way them Harab parties as of talkin', 'A room for the night, a room.' Now I don't much care for foreigners, and never did, especially them Harabs, which their abits ain't my own, so I as much int's the same. But this 'ere Harab party, he didn't seem to quite foller of my meaning, for all he done was to say as he said afore, 'A room for the night, a room.' And he shoves a couple of 1/2 crowns into my hand. Now it's always been a motto o' mine, that money is money, and one man's money is as good as another man's. So, not wishing to be disagreeable, which other people would have taken if I adient, I shows up air. I'd been downstairs at might ave been 1/2 hour, when I ears a shindy coming from this room." "What sort of a shindy?" "Yelling and shrieking, oh my gracious, it was enough to set your blood all curdled. For ear-piercingness I never did ear nothing like it. We do ave troublesome parties in air, like they do elsewhere, but I never did ear nothing like that before. I stood it for about a minute, but it kep on, and every moment I expected as the other parties as was in the ooze would be complainin', so up I comes and I thumps at the door, and it seemed that thump I might for all the notice that was took of me." "Did the noise keep on?" "Keep on? I should think it did keep on. Lord love you! Shriek after shriek, I expected to see the roof took off." "Were there any other noises? For instance, were there any sounds of struggling, or of blows?" "There weren't no sounds except of the party hollering." "One party only?" "One party only. As I says afore, shriek after shriek, when you put your ear to the panel there was a noise like some other party blubbering, but that weren't nothing. As for the hollering you wouldn't have thought that nothing what you might call human could ave kept up such a screechin'. I thumps and at last when I did think that I should ave to ave the door broke down, the Harab says to me from inside, 'Go away. I pay for the room. Go away.' I did think that pretty good, I tell you that. So I says, 'Pay for the room or not pay for the room, you didn't pay to make that shindy. And what's more,' I says, 'if I hear it again,' I says, 'out you goes. And if you don't go quiet I'll ave somebody in as'll pretty quickly make you.'" "Then was there silence?" "So to speak there was, only there was this sound as if some party was blubbering, and another sound as if a party was panting for his breath." "Then what happened?" "Seeing that, so to speak, all was quiet, down I went again. And in another quarter of a hour, or it might ave been 20 minutes, I went to the front door to get a mouthful of hair. And Mrs. Barker, what lives over the road, at number 24, she comes to me and says, that their Arab party of yours didn't stop long. I looks at her. I don't quite follow you, I says, which I didn't. I saw him come in, she says, and then, a few minutes back, I see him go again, with a great bundle on his head he couldn't hardly stagger under. Oh, I says, that's news to me. I didn't know he'd gone, nor see him neither, which I didn't. So, up I comes again, and, sure enough, the door was open, and it seems to me that the room was empty, till I come upon this poor young man what was lying behind the bed. There was a growl from the doctor. If you'd had any sense, and sent for me at once, he might have been alive at this moment. How was I to know that, Dr. Glossop? I couldn't tell. My finding him there murdered was quite enough for me. So I runs downstairs, and I nips hold of Gustus Barley, what was leaning against the wall, and I says to him, Gustus Barley, run to the station as fast as you can and tell them that a man's been murdered, that Harab's been and killed a bloke. And that's all I know about it, and I couldn't tell you no more, Mr. Phillips, not if you was to keep on asking me questions not for hours and hours. Then you think it was this man, with a motion towards the bed, who was shrieking? To tell you the truth, Mr. Phillips, about that I don't hardly know what to think. If you had asked me I should have said it was a woman. I ought to know a woman's holler when I hear it, if anyone does. I've heard enough of 'em in my time, goodness knows. And I should have said that only a woman could have hollered like that, and only her when she was raving mad. But there weren't no woman with him. There was only this man what's murdered, and the other man, and as for the other man I will say this, that he ain't got twopenny worth of clothes to cover him. But, Mr. Phillips, howsomever that may be, that's the last Harab I'll have under my roof, no matter what they pays, and you may mark my words I'll have no more. Mrs. Henderson, once more glancing upward, as if she imagined herself to have made some declaration of a religious nature, shook her head with much solemnity.